Okay, I'm sorry for this. I believe that I'm now. You should be able to hear me now because we get some echo here in the room. Maybe Sayad, you can confirm through the chat channel that you do hear me right now. Okay, that's good. So I'm not sure where I was last, but we're going to talk about today 3 trends. The trends is in the aftermarket business. The first trend is the millennials, the higher expectations on not only when you sell products, but also on the aftermarket selling products. The omnichannel trend, that is that you're not only selling spare parts from a proprietary solution for creating spare part catalogs, but also and then publishing it to a proprietary solution to show catalogs. But you want to have this information in all your channels. You want to have the same level information in your own web shop and your service portal in other channels. And then the third one trend is Amazon. Amazon getting into the spare part business and Amazon alike companies. So the first trend, the millennials, they grew up with technology and they are very, very picky about technology. If it doesn't work, they will not get back to your system, even if it's a professional system. We mainly work with professional portals, service organizations looking for spare parts and maintaining big machines. But even these people working there, they are millennials. They are used to their mobile phone. If it doesn't work, they will complain and say, I can't do my work because this system is not good enough. So they have high expectations on the look and feel of the user and the customer experience of the aftermarket portal, of finding the spare parts and how it is shown. And they basically wanted to work on their mobile phone, something that we have been able to avoid for a long time in the spare part business, but which we can't get around anymore. So this is not the focus for this webinar, because we have had another webinar where we have been telling about how you can have a good publication, a good presentation of the aftermarket information and integrate it very well with the ERP system. So one way to tackle the millenniums is to make your online catalogs and your online web shops millennium-proof. Make sure they work on a telephone, and don't be afraid to have a lot of menus and choices at the same time. If I look at the picture to the right here, I get afraid. I see too many menus and possibilities, but for a millennial, it seems quite normal and they will find their way around. Of course, it is good if you can fully configure your interfaces so that you can actually offer different interfaces to different people. So there was the millennials, a trend in the aftermarket, making it higher demands, making it more like the B2C, making it more like selling to customers. Another trend is that, as I said, we're no longer happy if we have a proprietary product where we create our spare part catalogs, which with a proprietary format send this to a viewer where you can see the spare parts, and if you're lucky, you can put them into a shopping cart and you can buy them from there. If you go, if the customer already has if you already have a web shop, then you want also the spare part information available there, and it should be possible to buy it there. So we need one single source of aftermarket information that can supply in an open format information to more than one channel, many channels, and each channel should get the information it needs. So how do we tackle that, or why is this important? If we look today to manufacturers, then already today 52% have their own web shop for selling aftermarket spare parts and other aftermarket stuff. 18% use a specific service portal, and 25% actually already today send information to a third-party marketplace. But more interesting is that 33% already today use multiple channel. They send the information to not only their own web shop, but also to a service portal. And at the same time, they are selling to the third marketplace. And having one single source of aftermarket information and then being able to choose the channels where you want to publish this and sell your spare parts gives you a lot of freedom. It gives you the possibility to maybe test on the market to sell directly to the end users and see how your distributors and resellers react on that. And if they don't like it, you can use their channels instead. And you have much more freedom to try different business models of selling your spare parts. So our vision of working with spare parts information, as I said, is that we build an aftermarket product information management system. A lot of companies already today have their product information management system to be able to sell goods, finished goods, through different channels and show information about them through different channels. But if it comes to spare parts and tools and accessories and spare part kits and bulletins and instructions, manuals, drawings, then it's often not the same situation. And we think that should be treated in the same way. There was an investigation where it said that 33% of the manufacturers today already have more than 50% of their sales is actually aftermarket sales. So it should be treated as good as normal sales of your goods. And this is something that we definitely want and go and talk to about today. How do you build up this aftermarket PIM with all this aftermarket information that you then can publish to very many channels, or the channels that you like, either to our own Signifikant, we have our own service portal, marketplace through our open format. So there was a second trend, and we get back to that about how to build up, how we can help you build up such an aftermarket information management system. But the third trend that we are looking at is that Amazon, and it's between quotes, has been moving into the business-to-business market. Not only you can buy toilet paper for them anymore, but you can also buy goods, but also spare parts actually. And they offer an excellent search possibility, speed of delivery, very good logistics, transparency, where is my part, and they drive down the costs. So, and again, you can replace Amazon by any other gray market spare part competitor you have. And this is, of course, a threat. And the threat is even getting bigger when you understand that they will, of course, focus on the a handful of small, high-margin items that they will make a lot of profit of. And then you will be left in selling all the other spare parts that you might sell one per year. So your margin is Jeff Bezos' opportunity. So this needs to be handled and we see two ways to handle this. First of all, is get on the same level, or at least almost the same level. It will probably be hard to get on the same level as Amazon when it comes to their logistics and their look and feel and everything they have. But you need to meet the expectations of, for instance, the millennials, when it comes to logistics, when it comes to delivery time, when it comes to transparency in the order process. Where is my part? When will I receive it? And how products are presented. So this actually we discussed a lot during the previous webinar, which is available online to look at, or we can present it again for you if you want, and you just contact Karishma. But this is very much about the look and feel, how you present the information, but also with a very tight integration with your ERP, that you present the information and the tools in a very nice way, that you make it possible to search for exactly the correct version of your product and get exactly the correct spare parts. Even if they have been replaced a few times, you will get the correct replacement. You should immediately see your price. You should immediately see if it's available. If you order it, you should immediately know when you get it. And you get also, at the same time, you get information that might be useful, like a bulletin. If I put 5 parts in my shopping basket and I check out, then the system should tell, okay, you should actually download these 5 documents. There are 3 technical bulletins and there are 2 instructions how to replace these spare parts. And this is something that I will soon get back to, because this is where, of course, you as a manufacturer have the advantage over, for instance, Amazon. You have all the information and the data about your products, and that data advantage you need to take care of and use to sell the spare parts. So I said, when it's ordered, you should get the delivery information, tracking information. You should get almost on the level of Amazon. Maybe you don't get there completely. You could also choose to join them and use their channel to sell your spare parts. But that, of course, will not tell that not someone else will still be doing that too. The second way of dealing with the Amazon thread is, the first one was do what they do. The second one is do what they cannot do. And that is that you have the information advantage. You can, in a much better way, guarantee that the customer or the service technicians get the correct parts. You can build add-on value. You can show accessories that are interesting when you have a certain product. You can also present the tools that are necessary to serve the product. Maybe there are special tools needed to install a certain spare parts. Then you can show that. You can show instructions and link all the data that you have together, and in that way give a much better experience to the user than you can get if you just see the spare part itself, maybe for a cheaper price, but then you won't have the experience that you can provide when you put all this information together. You can give the customer personalized pages, because you may know what products they have. Give them relevant information. Be proactive and send them information about the products they have bought before. So that's all about data and handling this data well, and also making this data not a proprietary database, but open this data up for all systems you have in your company. And this is a paradigm that is known as a product information management system. It's at this moment not often used for spare parts or the aftermarket. It's more used to sell finished goods. But it means that you manage the information required to market and sell your products through various distribution channels. It's a central set of product data that can be used and share information with different medias. So this is what I've been talking about, but then we want to take this also to the aftermarket, to have one central information. So that's our proposal. While the classic PIM focuses on finished good, we want to focus on the aftermarket part sales and services. Also, services are products you can sell. So, for instance, you can go on and not only sell spare parts and tools, but you can sell subscriptions on tools. If you have a workshop, then maybe you want to make sure that you always have the correct tools and the updated tools. Then you can sell them a subscription that they will get every time there is a new tool they need. They will get it, and you will know what type of machines they are servicing. You will know what tools they need, and you can send it to them proactively. So we are a software provider. We provide a solution to manage this information and to publish the information. But this product information management is very much about the processes. It's actually the software supports the process, but the process is most important. It is finding all the information that is there today in your company, and understand which information is important to gather centrally and to manage centrally. Define the master data. Define what data should every part have, and what are the valid values of all the attributes that we are interested in. And also, who owns what data, who owns what object, who owns the spare part? Is that the factory that produces the spare part, or the warehouse that keeps the spare part, or who owns it? But the owner probably will not own the complete object. Maybe the factory owns the spare part, which means they can create the spare part and they can delete it and modify it. But some of the attributes will be owned by other systems and other organizations within your company. So this has to be agreed on. Then you should continuously maintain this and validate that everything still is going well. So it's about designing the information, finding the information, and then find a system that can store this information and make sure that you validate it. And Signifikant, as you probably know, we come from creating spare part catalogues. We've come a long way in creating a solution for an aftermarket product information management system. It's probably not has all the functions yet that maybe a PIM system have at the start of a PIM system, but we can offer something that they definitely cannot, and that is to have all the spare part and aftermarket information in the way that you would need. And I will go into that later. There's very specific needs for the aftermarket for this information. So define the master data objects, define how they are going to be validated. And what do I mean with validation? And this is something that a normal PIM system will probably have hard to do. If we have filled our aftermarket information system with data, then we can add validation rules. You have the possibility to configure them using an XML language. And then you can do things like, does each product have a spare part list? Does each spare part list have exploded views? Do we have documentation on each product? And then we can maybe narrow this down and say every product should at least have a user manual. It might not have a wiring diagram, okay, but it should have a user manual. Are there documents that are referenced but actually missing or empty? Do we have illustrations which have hotspots, or we have, for instance, a part row that says, well, on position 10 is my spare part, and then we have an illustration that doesn't have a hotspot of position 10. So we have missing links. Does each product have regional information? We have said that each product, we have to tell if it should be sold in EMEA, in Asia, or in Americas. So this is like a mandatory specification. This is just an example. you can add as many specifications or dynamic attributes as you like. And then you can set up a validation rule that will give you a list of all the products or parts or illustrations or documents that actually are missing this information. So, because soon you will have an enormous amount of information and it will be very hard to do these validations manually. Even though we have already in the past, we have had very good ways to do this by sorting on columns, and then you would find the empty information. But now, by gathering this in one place and setting up an engine that will go through all the items, all the elements in the complete aftermarket database, and finding all the errors that we have in our system, will hugely increase the data quality. So this is functionality we have today in the product. I will soon show you an example of it. Does every instruction have a tool list? So as I said, it's not only for products or parts, it's also if we have like instructions in the system, then maybe the instructions should be followed with a list of tools that are needed to perform the instructions, so that we have approved data. And when we have all this data gathered, we can start using it. As I said, we have to beat Amazon, and we have to take care of the data advantage we have. So we can use the data advantage for setting up references between elements that help you to present cross-sales opportunities in your channels. Helping also to show relevant information, relevant documentation, relevant software updates together with information that is shown on the on your channels. Accessories, kits, building kits and push the kits, and really make sure that not only the proprietary spare part catalog knows about the kits, but all systems know about the kits, also the web shop. Service bulletins, and as what I said, the last one, tool subscriptions. All these are business opportunities that will appear when you take good care of your aftermarket information. Next step is not only to present and provide all the information about the product and the models that you've created, but actually keep track of the individual machines that your customers have, and present it to them and give them an entry point. If I go into one of my channels, then I know what products there are, and I can combine that with the aftermarket information. I can offer people to register their machines. Maybe we don't know who owns it, but we can offer self-registration, so they can keep an eye on and get information, proactive information from the manufacturer. Next step, and that's already something we have implemented today in our product, is connect to Internet of Things, connect to the products, show live parts, and this can even be used for preventive maintenance, so that we know what which machines you have, we know how they are doing, and we can say that, well, you should come in for service, or you should book service because the heater of this washing machine is breaking down. We can even maintain the information, the aftermarket information. Maybe during a service intervention, a pump is replaced in a specific machine, and then we can update the information of that machine so that we know what is in there. So we can keep track of machine cards and maintain them. So there are a lot of functionality here, and everything starts with good data. To have this aftermarket product information management system, to gather everything centrally and to have it consistent information. And this is the solution that Signifikant provides. Everything that's on the right side, we have been talking in another webinar, that those are the channels. which also includes the Signifikant web viewer, where you present everything in a very nice way, where you integrate with the ERP systems. Today, we are more focusing on the left side of the picture, and that is the database itself, the Aftermarket Product Information Management System, and all the sources and how we manage this information. We see there a sign of a database. It's a central database with all the information. It's not only a database, it's also a lot of files, documents, and so on. And then on top of it, we have something called Signifikant Manager, which is a Windows application to manage all this information manually, basically. But everything you can do there in the manager, you can also do automatically. Well, maybe not everything, but everything that's interesting to do, like importing information, publishing information, validating information. All that can also be done by the Signifikant server and be done completely automated at night, unattended. And since we do have this validation in place, we can ensure that quality data is going out and be published. So I'm now going to show some slides from the Signifikant Manager. And as I said, everything we do in this manager, most of it can also be done then automatically. So when we set up a system like this, an aftermarket information management system, this central database, then in our system we have something called Site, and that is gathering all information in one place. Site is one database and a lot of files. It's the highest organization level of the information. Most companies will just have one site where everything is, but for some reason maybe they want to have silos of information. Otherwise, everything within one site can be connected to each other, can be referenced to each other, which makes this platform very powerful. So I mentioned that everything can be related to each other. So what's that everything? Well, that is all information elements that you need for the aftermarket. It starts with small pieces. It starts with parts. Parts and images. Images make illustrations when you add hotspots to them. Illustrations and parts become part assembly when you put them together in a part list and a picture and hotspots. And then you can start building catalogs. And in the catalog, you can start creating notes, which are chapters maybe. And underneath these notes, you can add documents and part assemblies and maybe parts. And everything will have a name and you will have text. So what you see here, this list, are all the elements that together make up the aftermarket database, the aftermarket catalogs, if you want to call it like that. And all this can be handled in this manager, and it can also be handled through the server, like create new items, update them, create references between the items. So before we start filling the database with a lot of data, we will have to design the data. We'll have to tell what brands do we have, what dynamic attributes do we have, what type of elements do we have. So we start by designing our database, and we do that in the manager too. So we start by telling what are our brands, telling of what type of information do we have. We have basic types like catalogs and illustrations, but you can create your own subtypes. So if you look here at the bottom, we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 different document types. From now on, when we add a document to our database, we can tell if it's an electrical diagram or a user manual, instruction video. And this will not only help us to maybe easily filter them in the list if we have hundreds or thousands of documents, but it also helps us that if we look at the right side, we see something called permissions, and it says technical. That means that when we are including a document, and that document we say it's a technical presentation, then immediately it will be hidden for anyone that doesn't have the technical permission. So this is a functionality that allows you to structure the database in a way that makes it much more efficient. We've been talking about these dynamic attributes. There may be hundreds for a product, or maybe just 5 or 6. But once you have a part or you have a product, and you want to send information about that part or product to multiple channels, they are probably interested in a lot of information about it. They might, the logistics department might be interested in the package size or the weight, but the sales system will be interested in the tax level and in some financial number. And so all this information must be added to these elements. And then when you publish that information, the right information should follow. So here we say that we, for instance, have parts, and we say that every part will have a minimum order quantity. So this has nothing to do with the construction of the product. It has nothing to do who has created the spare part. It simply has to do with the ordering process. This part, you need to order at least 20 or 30. So we can add that information now to any element we have. Then we've been talking about master data. So this is basically building up the master data of our aftermarket. We're telling what attributes, what fields can we add to elements in our system, but then we also need to maintain and control the values that they can have. We can configure it so that we say, well, whatever value that is provided, it's okay. But we can also say, no, it's limited to the values that are already existing. So here we have a color attribute. And that attribute can have quite many values. We just see a number of them. We see 66 values. Beige, black, black gray, black silver, black steel, blue, bone, brown. So here you have to choose one of the existing, and you cannot just make up any of your own. So if we try to make some of our own, then the validation will break and say, no, you're not allowed. If it is set up like that, of course. Otherwise, you can just add new colors if it's not set up that it's not possible to add new ones. So by doing this, and by choosing the languages we're going to provide all the information, we have done the first important step. We have set up our database. We have chosen what kind of information elements we have, what kind of attributes will these have, what languages are we going to provide, the names and the descriptions, even the colors. We can say that if we go back here, now they have chosen it to be a string, which means it is not translatable. But if you choose this to be a text, then it actually becomes translatable, and you can have black in many languages and present it in many languages. So that's the first step, is designing the information, and then you use this manager to fill it. Here we see that we have a product storage. And we see that there are 57,430 products, and we have filtered it on all the products that include DM265 in a number of selected attributes. You can this search and filter is very advanced. You can select which fields and columns you want to search and filter on. So we have 86 that are actually shown, and then I can click on such a product, and then on the right side I see all the attributes of it. There are some standard attributes like what type is it, the label, persistent identity, and then on the specifications we have all the dynamic attributes. So if I select one of these, then I will actually, because these products, they are actually catalogs. So if I open them, I see the structure, I see the nodes. In this case, it's a structure where they have accessories, documents, and spare parts. And underneath these, they have presentations. I clicked on a presentation for a part assembly, and then we see an illustration with hotspots, and below that we see the part rows. So all this is managed in this tool. I can create all this manually by clicking on any node, and I can create new nodes. I can add an illustration, a part assembly, a catalog. I can edit it. I can copy it. I can copy complete structures to other catalogs. So, and there we have different types of customers today. Those who use this manager very much and create everything here, and those who import everything automatically into the system. And as soon as I click on the part row, then I also see the information on the part row. I can actually, from there, I can open the storage, where all the parts are of the system, in the system. In this case, there are 48,450 13 parts, and the part that I was selected in the part row is now selected here in the list. So I can see all the information about that part, and I can start editing it. And again, here we have a lot of functionality that allows you to use this data, to work with this data. We can replace a part and replace it everywhere. This is one way of replacing parts. A better way is actually to create part replacements, which is a separate element. We can show its change history. We can show it how it would look like in a web viewer. We can find all references. We can find all catalogs, all part assemblies, and so on that use this part. We can delete unused items that are not used in any catalog or any part assembly. We can get rid of it because maybe they're not used anymore. We can delete duplicates. So we have smart functions here. And one smart function is the extended specification. It's a little bit small, but this is a way of keeping track of this master data. This is a form that is created dynamically based on what we have said for each type of information. So we have information type part, but we can also have subtypes. We can have an information type technical part. And then we say that for that part, this information must be filled in. So we create automatically a form with all the information that should be filled in. And we see here that there is a color. And if I click there and I start typing black, then I get all the blacks that I have available. And I must choose from that list. In this case, I cannot add any others. So if I would do the same for a product on the left side, I get also a list, but again, I get a different list of attributes that are very specific for the products. And this is one step in maintaining the data quality. So in this case, we have a customer that imports a lot of information automatically, but then at the end, they enrich the data manually in the manager, go to these, and they have the help of our validation. I will get back here later. And the validation is then something that will actually help us to see where have I missed to fill in this information. If I've automatically imported 10 new products, then I can use the validation and say validate all, and they will automatically come up because I haven't enriched them with the data that's needed. So when I'm here in the manager and I choose validate all, it will give me a report. And if I open the report, I can see that I have, in this case, I've configured a number of validations. I'm looking, does every presentation have a name? Does every catalog have a documentation? Are all required specifications, and specifications are the dynamic attributes, are these provided? So it actually found 13 items of type kit that doesn't have a name for the presentation. And if I then double click on that row in the validation window, it will actually open the kit storage and it will show these 13. And as we can see, the validation was correct because these 13 kits, yes, they don't have a name. So what I can now do is start adding names to these kits. And in that sense, and then I can rerun the validation, and these should not be shown anymore in this window. Validation is something that can be run automatically when you import information. It can be run on demand, as I did now. I click and I say I want to validate. And it can be run before a publication. And then we can have rules that say that, okay, if a product or a part doesn't meet these validations, then it should not be published. So there are two levels. There are those that we just give a warning and we publish anyway, and those who will actually stop the publication of the part or products. So then we have all this information. I want to just go back to this one. What also makes it very specific, our database, is it's so specifically aimed at the aftermarket. All the elements you have, the bulletins and the footnotes and the filters and the parts and the images, each and any element on what level it is, it can be a complete catalog or just a single part, can be referenced to other elements, and the reference can have a meaning. You can use the references for cross sales. You can use the references for any other way of combining information. There are also other ways of information. If I have a part, then we can add images to it. We can add specifications to it. So this one has a minimum order quantity of 150, maximum 500. I can add footnotes to it. I can reference to any element. I can add bulletins to it, a filter. If I show this information, or if I open this in the web viewer, it will only be shown for products that are created in Romania with a serial number higher than the number it says there, 5801843398. I can add permissions, and I can give an element a status. Each element on each level can have a status, and this status can then be used to see if it's published or not. So I can have a status, like it says here, a status publish, which means that, yes, please publish this. Okay, so I've been showing how the manager works with the data. When it comes to importing data, we know that we have many different sources, and we have to configure our system to get information from these sources. One way is to use Excel or comma-separated values and to configure our system to understand these. This is an export that already exists from the customer. And then we have our import configuration, and there we tell that, okay, on row 1 we have the name. On row 2 we have a specification, which is the category. It's a dynamic attribute. On row 3 we have the subcategory, and so on and so on. And then if you go a little bit further down, it says a part row. It starts at row 11. From row 11 and down, we will have the parts that are part of this part assembly. And then we tell the columns that the first column will have the name, and then we have the spare part compatibility, then we have the lead time, the quantity per box, minimum order quantity. So we're just configuring, and in this way we can take care of many exports from different systems. The other way we do is that we have specified a standard format, the open format, SSX, significant, simplified XML, that we say that, okay, if you want to export your parts and your information, use this format, use this XML format, and you can immediately import it to our system. If you have another XML format, we normally can just create a transformation and still import it pretty straight away. And if you have any custom format, then we will create a custom module to import the information. So importing the information, technically it is a project, but most often it's more in the process. How is the data extracted? How do we get these files? What will be in the files? How do we deal with changes? How are we going to send incremental files and so on? It's more on that level. The technical level of importing information is most often not the biggest deal. And then we need to publish the information to multiple channels, and that means that we have a storage with publications. You can create 10, 20, how many publications that you like. We have different types of publications, where the XML publication is where we export or publish to the open XML format. So you can import that again in any other system you have. You can, of course, publish to a PDF to our website, which we call a remote publication, or we also have a publication to offline, our offline solution. What is interesting is that you can select very much what is published. You can select a site, you can select a catalog, you can select to include objects or elements with certain permissions, or exclude, of course, with other permissions. You can also, every element has a workflow, has a status. So you can include only elements that have a certain status or certain statuses. And then you, of course, choose the target to send it to. And this then can be called by the server. So each night you can both import and validate and publish automatically all your new information. So this was a product demonstration, but it was more to illustrate what we think you need to do, and that is to expect that the aftermarket is going to change. Expect that the expectations are going to be higher. Expect that people who in their free time use Amazon to buy toilet paper want, when they buy a or professional spare part during their daytime, that they expect the same level of user experience. Then there are companies like Amazon and Alibaba who have a lot of money to make this a very nice user experience. But what you have is the information advantage. And if you have a structured information database, as I just shown, with all the elements that we have and all the relations and all the flexibility to add more information, dynamic information, then you have you're better on a better level than your competition. And then coming back to what we've taught in the other webinar, which was more focused on how to present this information, is to make sure that your customer have a unique experience, maybe by seeing their own products, and to exceed the end user's expectations. But this is something that we have been showing in another webinar, and we are happy to show again. It's more about how we present this information, how we integrate with ERP systems and, for instance, ticketing systems and other systems. This was it for me. I move over to Karishma. Thank you. Oh, well, I can give her my headset. We've changed headset here.
Thank you, Ruud, for the lovely presentation. Thank you all for joining this afternoon. And if you have any questions, we're open for another 5 minutes to answer any queries that you may have. Please write your question in the questions bar. This webinar is available to be viewed on demand. So you can log in to the link that is provided by our email to you at the end of this email to view the webinar as many times as you want, and also share it with your teams. And if you have any questions or if you would like more details, please get in touch with us with the email ID that is again mentioned in the email that you will receive at the end of this webinar. We will be on mute and wait for any questions that you may have. Thank you. It looks like we have no questions. So thank you again very much for joining the session this afternoon. And we will send you notifications on future webinars and other content that we have, which may be of interest to your aftermarket team as well as to you. Thank you very much for joining in this afternoon.